Good morning to you, Colin.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming in. 20 years ago this month, it seems extraordinary now when you think back to it. What makes you want to talk about this? You've not talked about this at all until now. Why do you want to now talk about this, Colin?
I just felt that it was appearing every day in newspapers and various things that I was listening to people, and that was an emotional day on the day that she died.
The moment you got the phone call, and
yes, I can, vividly.
What was it like? Where were you? And
I was in bed with my wife, and she answered the phone. I had a bit of banter with the guy on the other end, and then she looked round at me and said, "I think you better get up and sit on the end of the bed and take this phone call." And it was a colleague from Balmoral who was telling me that Her Royal Highness was actually injured. And put the television on and you'll see. So that's what I did. You know, it was a bit of a shock. Got dressed and then went down to Kensington Palace.
so when did the news come through that it was even worse than you thought, and you were summoned, I guess, to go to Paris?
Yes, it was quite difficult because Robin Cook, who was then the Foreign Secretary, was on the television giving what had happened. And he was explaining that she was injured. When in fact the private secretary, Michael, was telling the six of us in the office that sadly she'd died.
So at that point, they then say, we need to bring Diana back, and you're charged with going out there.
Yes.
How difficult was it, Colin, when you land in Paris and you've got this furore around what's happened because there's extraordinary circumstances, and then you have to walk into a room and that you see that your boss, someone who I'm sure you admired and thought the world of, was passed away and was lying on a table in a mortuary?
Yes, the 24 hours was quite difficult. Getting to Paris was fine. Getting to the embassy was great, except I didn't speak French. My wife speaks it fluently, which a phone helped. And I knew one of the military attachés, Brigadier Ritchie, who immediately came into the room, and he used to work with Princess Anne. So I was taken in to help, where I went to the hotel, and then I went to the hospital, and arrived at the hospital, lots of people about, on I think it was the first floor, and there was a lot of people.
And in a way, the world was in shock, grief, disbelief, and you had to hold things together, didn't you? And you were the person that had to get practical. Yes,
I mean, I was an ex-inspector, but I did say that perhaps people are expecting lords, ladies and colonels in this, in this particular instance, but we were dealt with by Sir Michael J. very, very well, and given everything that I needed, I was given.
But you had to sort of draw the curtains, turn on the fans, really practical things that in grief people hadn't thought of.
It's very difficult and emotional to see a person lying in a bed and not in a mortuary. And when I was in the room, which was very, very hot, I looked out of the window and I could see people on a roof. Now, whether they knew where the princess was, I don't know, but that worried me, so I got some blankets, because there was no curtains, and we put blankets along the windows, which made it even hotter in the room. And I then went and got some fans to try and cool the room down, and that one moment in my life which perhaps my professionalism was lacking a little bit, because as I turned round, the eyelashes and the hair of the princess were moving, caused by the fan. And that just struck me, just for
a second you thought.
I had to turn away, think about it, and then grip myself back and get on with what I was doing.
Well, like everybody else, and you even more so probably, we were desperate for it not to be true. So the idea that potentially, you know, that this was all not true and that she was okay and she was going to survive was what we were after. Your relationship with her is fascinating. What was she like as a boss, and sort of how close do you think you became?
There is a line. You don't cross that line. You speak to when you're spoken to. And it is still very correct. She was still very royal. And yes, we were often together in the car, and it would be light conversation. She had a tremendous sense of humour. And wherever we went, I never had a crossword in the 2 years. Not one crossword. I think they went in too fast, but in the inquest that was sorted out. I've driven through the tunnel myself. There are stanchions in the tunnel, which if you can be taken a little bit by if you're at 2 trains in a station, one moves out, you think you're moving. You go into fast where there's stanchions, it's getting a little bit worrying. So whatever happened, I went perhaps a little bit too fast and being taken away with the lady in the back.
Did you feel a strange sense of responsibility and wished you were driving that day? And
Yes, you always do that. You always do that, yes. That is not good to have in the mind.
Yeah.
And what are your memories of Princess Diana now? Because, of course, that was such an emotional time and 20 years ago, but when you think back and think of her legacy?
A great boss. I felt the last year, from August the 28th, when the divorce came through, that year up to her death, she felt to me, because I didn't work with her years ago as a police officer, I was with Princess Anne, but she was good. She seemed to be living a good life and happy.
Do you think she will be proud of her boys and
Oh, tremendously. Tremendously, yeah. Really would be.
Colin, thank you very much for coming in and
Absolute
talking
pleasure.
to us this morning. It's been really fascinating to hear your side of the story
Thank you very
and
much.
sharing your story as well.
Thank you.